Welcome back to another episode of Bitch We Got the Tea podcast. So for today, we about to get into chapter 3 of White History. This chapter will be dealing with the topic of the Yuezhi, also known as the Yue-Chi and the Yancai, which are three different names that the Chinese at that time in history referred to a group of Caucasians that were right outside their borders of the Great Wall to the west, who they referred to these nomadic Caucasian barbarians. All right, so let's hop on into it. So the Book of Han, it mentions the Yuezhi prior to their major migration of the 2nd century BC. Populations continued to occupy the Tarim Basin, avoiding the great eastern central Takla Makan Desert, and these were commonly known to the Chinese as the Lesser Yuezhi. So there were two groups, the Greater Yuezhi and the Lesser Yuezhi. The Lesser Yuezhi were known as the Tocharians. So before we get a little bit deeper in there, I do want to touch on some of the predecessor or preceding.
Where the Tokarians came from?
So the Tocharians are basically a group of UZ, which is basically Caucasians that
Uh huh.
were already living outside of China on the western border of China.
Oh, okay.
hmm And thank you for asking that question. So before we get really deep into the UZ, just going to touch on their neighbors to the northeast, which is this tribe called the Zhang and they basically had their little run from like 3 BC to like 1 AD. So this
hmm
group, they were like a tribal confederation of nomadic peoples who, according to ancient Chinese sources, inhabited eastern Eurasian steppe from the 3rd century BC to the late 1st century AD. The leader, Modu Chanyu, was the supreme leader after 209 BC and founded the Xiongnu Empire. They overthrew previous overlords. The Yuezhi, the Yang Yu became the dominant power in the eastern steppes of Asia at that time. So now to go a little bit further into the Zhang Yu, they basically had a relationship with the Chinese Empire that was still kind of starting to come together, where they would have periods of war with them, then they would have periods of peace, and then there were periods where the Zhangyu were basically subjugated and enslaved by the Chinese. So this other group of Caucasians were also, um, they had like an off and on relationship where they would either be fighting with them niggas or they might even be enslaved by the Chinese from time to time, depending on what was popping, what year and
Right.
shit. So ultimately, the Zhang were defeated by the Han Dynasty in a centuries-long conflict, and this led to the Confederation of Zhang splitting into two, and then they were forced to resettle, you know, outside of the Han borders. And then during the 16 Kingdoms era of China, um, they were referred to as one of the five barbarians, the Zanyu people. They eventually founded the dynastic states of Han Zhao, Northern Liang, and Hu, whatever that other word is, Hu Zia in northern China. So they still stay on the borders of China, I guess modern day
hmm
Mongolia and shit like that. But these people, the Zhang Yu, were also referred to as barbarians, and that's just something I want y'all to kind of just hold on to, because that's a theme that you will hear come up again and again. So this same group of people, um, according to archaeologists who performed, I guess, genetic research, they confirmed that this group had relations to the Huns, or the people who would eventually become the Huns. All right, moving on. So
Who was the people that would eventually become the Huns, though?
the the Xiong Yu, so they it's spelled XIONGNU. Even though I
Hmm.
don't have that particular slide, because this was some additional research I did last minute, so I got this on another screen. But I will drop a link in the description for the listeners that want to do further research on the Zhang Yu as well. So
Right.
this next slide that you guys can't see is also just kind of breaking down how this group of people were the proto Turkic peoples, and this group of people would also become the proto Mongolians. So it says that basically, according to a paper published in 2020, the journal Evolutionary Human Sciences by Cambridge University Press, they're quoted as saying the dominant part of the Zanyu population is likely to have spoken Turkic. So then further on, it goes on to say Andre Wink states that the Zanyu probably spoke an early form of Turkic, even if they were not themselves Turks nor Turkic speaking. They were in close contact with Turkic speakers very early on. And then this other, I guess, researcher goes on to say that the Zanyu, he sees them either as proto Turks or proto Mongols who possibly spoke a language related to Ding Ling. And as funny as that sound, that's a whole other, kind of like mini culture or civilization of people. And out of that culture, definitely people who definitely would go on to become known as Turks and become known as Mongolians came up out of that civilization.
Hmm.
So this next slide, it basically talks about that group again, the Zanyu, uh, mixed barbarians. So according to the Book of Zhao, History of Northern Dynasties, Tang Dian, New Book of Tang, the Gok Turks and the ruling Ashina clan was a component of the Zanyu Confederation. However, the Ashina surnamed Gok Turks were also stated to be they were mixed barbarians. So just I guess stay there for a second, like we always talk about. You either whole, you either half, quadroon, octoroon. These people that they're saying were mixed barbarians clearly were a mixture of Caucasian and Asian, if that makes sense.
Yeah, clearly.
So now moving on, let's see, boom, boom, boom. All right, yeah, moving on to the next slide. All right, so now the UZ, the nomadic herd. So basically, from part one and part two, some of the different tribes and groups of early Caucasians in Asia all have a similarity culture-wise. A lot of them were nomadic people. Some of them actually settled down in certain areas and established, you know, cultures and little kingdoms or whatever you want to call it. But the Great UZ was a nomadic herd which the lesser UZ clearly had never been. They moved about
Mm.
following their cattle and had the same customs as those of the Zhang Yu. As their soldiers numbered more than 100,000, they were strong and despised the Zhang Yu. In the past, they lived in a region between Dunhuang and Qilian. Dunhuang is in the northernmost area of the modern Gansu province to the east of the Tarim Basin, while the Qilian mountain range borders central Gansu on its western edge. Basically, archaeology is yet to support the claim of Greater UZ occupying Dune Hang, although the steppe nomads are notoriously hard to pin down archaeologically. However, the hostile Zanyu Confederation already occupied at least part of these lands during this period. The Greater UZ were the most powerful nomadic group on the northern western Chinese plains. So, all right, we're going to the next slide. So, you know, we got established they nomads. They right on the northwest kind of border and directly west border of China as far as these different groups of Caucasians. So now we get into this next slide where it breaks down Yuezhi, Yue-Chi, Yancai, Caucasian. So various detailed, overly complicated breakdowns have been provided everywhere else online to try and provide an explanation of the name Yuezhi or Yue-Chi. The literal translation from Chinese is moon people, which is often dismissed as being meaningless. No one poo poos when the Native American used the word pale faces to describe white skinned Europeans in North America. It's reasonably direct description of a white faced people by people who have naturally darker complexion. The Chinese applied the UZ label to both the Tocharians, who are the lesser UZ, and the Indo-Iranians, who are the greater UZ. So it's reasonable to assume that they found the description to be apt, bearing in mind the fact that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. It seems the Chinese were literally talking about people with faces that were the color of the moon. The UZ
Yeah.
literally were moon people, otherwise known as pale faces. And then,
So that would be white people, right?
huh?
That
Yeah,
would be Caucasians, right?
exactly, exactly.
Right.
So, um, and like I mentioned before, like when you go to some of these other countries and you really start to travel over there, just and me even going to like Japan in certain areas, like a lot of the people were like what we see on TV, like that modern Asian that you see. But when you go off into certain areas outside the countryside, you start seeing motherfuckers that look a little bit more brown. They may look, you know, genetically like Asian, but they more brown, looking like a Cambodian or somebody from Thailand, which are, you know, Asians that are more melanated, you know what I'm saying, than your typical Chinese or Japanese, if that makes sense.
Right.
So from the time or the viewpoint of what they're talking about here, the average Chinese people will probably still more brown than yellow, if that makes sense. At that time, because they probably had more melanin in them and it wasn't breeded out yet. But anyway, and then of course in the next slide, just to kind of elaborate and go a little bit further into what we just talked about, um, you know, you got a picture just showing some white people who it would clearly make sense that they would be moon people since they are pale, white, and traditionally not only in just probably Asia, but in Africa, especially the Egyptians, you know, with the ancestors using phrases as the children of the sun kissed people, the melanin,
Hmm.
that tan is the mark of the sun. So our melanin would make us the sun people, and those are the moon people. And they even divert onto a little bit of the esoteric stuff, once again, you have the word lunatic. People who worship the moon. Why? Because the moon didn't kill their ass and give them skin cancer.
Right.
you
Or
feel me?
burn the ass.
Exactly. So there's many layers to that sun people, moon people uh, conversation.
Yeah.
Regardless of what culture. So now to dive in a little bit further. So the UZ around the time of I guess 120, no, actually, yes, 128 BC, they had left outside the western borders of China and traveled west, further west, over into another area that in ancient times was known as Bactria. And this area,
Oh,
was
yeah, that sounds familiar.
exactly so. Bactria. Let me just jump to Google real quick to try to at least modern. Let's see, Bactria is what country now? Is now called. All right, so Bactria, basically, the region, it sits between the mountains of Hindu Kush and the Amu Darya, but it's basically parts of modern day Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan.
Okay.
Once again, where a motherfucker that look like Stan, they name is Stan, that's where these ancient white people went to conquer next. So the Bactrians, um, these people were also identified by this point in time as Indo-Scyth or Indo-Scythians. They were the predecessors of, you know, it's like, it's like, how can I say it? I'm trying to think of a modern analogy. All right, so you have the white people that left England. At the time they were in England, they identified as, or known in history as being British. But then, a year or two later, they sailed over to the Massachusetts to establish the first of the colonies, blah, blah, blah. And at that point in history, they now known as the citizens of the colony known as Massachusetts, or whatever you call it, Massachusetts. I don't know what the hell that word is, you know what I'm saying? And then over time, as more colonies developed, and then they became to be identified as America, then known
Wouldn't
people.
it be because what isn't it just considered, what do they call Boston people? Yeah, I think you might be right.
So that's the city, but the state, I don't even know what you would call, like, a New Yorker is somebody from New York, but I don't know what you would call somebody from Massachusetts from that level.
Oh
But
yeah, no, I don't know either.
either way, you kind of get the vibe of where I'm taking you, right? So
Yeah.
when they were outside of the China, they were the UZ. Then eventually, once they left and invaded the next neighboring little area slash kingdom of other whites who were chilling minding their business. Basically, the more these UZ were the Brawlic barbarian Capital One, what's in your wallet crackers.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
head
saying?
ass.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they ran up and kind of conquered and took over that kingdom of Bactria, and then eventually down the line, yeah, those people would eventually become known as Scythians in the kingdom of Scythia. But anyway, we'll move on to the next slide. But actually, if you look at the picture, so it shows 176 BC, they go to Wusun. Then from there, by 155, they are at some place called Taiwan. Then by 120 BC, they were in Bactria, which we just touched upon. And then by 30, basically CE or AD, because this is before the current era or before Christian era. 30 current era or Christian era, however you want to look at it, they had started their invasions into northern India. So the UZ are still, um, at that point, by the time they invaded India, they definitely was, on the beginning of their like white supremacy move, basically early phases. All right, so to move on to the next slide here. So this slide is showing like a map of the Asian steppes. If you look in the bottom right corner of the map, you'll see red, which represents the Han Dynasty. You'll see like this orange, solid and striped area where the Greater UZ used to live. Pardon me, before they were ran out after being defeated by the Chinese. And it was actually, I believe it was a combination of the Chinese teaming up with the Zhang to the northeast that came together and drove out the UZ, which they referred to as the barbarians.
Mm.
And then let me see if okay, that's I don't got the slide. But anyway, in the same map we're looking at, the other orange circle area to the left side of the map is the Tarim Basin. So when they were forced out of, huh?
I said, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so when they were forced out of there, they end up settling down in the Takla Makam Desert and the Tarim Basin or whatever. And this is where, in recent times, archaeologists and scientists found them 5,000-year-old Caucasian mummies, perfectly preserved and everything that I showed you before.
Yeah.
And this whole, yeah, all right, so, all right, moving on.
Yeah, I remember you showing me that before.
Mm-hmm. So the next slide here is just kind of just breaking down the Greater UZ as they had to evacuate because of the Chinese kingdom being on their ass. They end up running up into the Kazakh steppe, and in this area, they would eventually enter an area that was controlled by this group of people called the Saka. And then along the way, it says they end up bumping up against their former neighbors, the Wusun, and end up launching an attack against them. And then eventually, even though they attacked the Wusun eventually end up joining them. And shit, maybe this is a perfect example. If you can't beat them, join them.
Right.
So the UZ barbarians, they caused the Wusun to just join these niggas because I guess they were too brolic. So they were like, fuck
right.
it, we just gonna roll with y'all. And then both of those groups combined, so both of them were two groups of the Caucasian tribes, but now they done mobbed up, and then at this point combined, they're about to make their next move or whatever.
Yeah, their next move finna be their best move.
Exactly. So now, let's talk about here. Let me jump to this next slide for y'all real quick. Okay, so boom, it's talking about another defeat is inflicted upon the Greater UZ, this time by an alliance of the Wusun and the Zhang. The Wusun chief would appear to be the driving force of this alliance, which forced them to migrate further west, pushing them into the Saka Plains, like we mentioned. And then at this point, it says they were forced to enter Transoxiana from the direction of Dayun, which is a Chinese term for Fergana. They penetrated Sogdiana from the northern reaches, initially dominating the Sakas who were already there. So the Sakas are yet another group of these Caucasian tribes who were minding their business before these boys, the UZ, done rolled through on their ass. So now
Right.
it's saying, and this is 140 BC. This is where Chinese and Western classical records converge and allow the greater UZ to be identified with the migrant arrivals and Bactria who are mistakenly referred to as Tocharians. So the Tocharians are the lesser UZ at the very beginning of this chapter. So that's like, to put it like in some kind of hood terms that we can at least immediately relate to. You got black people 2023, but you might have a group of black people that's Bloods, another group of black people that's the Crips. So it's documenting how the Bloods done, did this conquered and did this over here, and then another path, the other group, the Crips, is also kind of documenting where they went and conquered and so on and so forth. But we're still with the greater UZ, which they are mistaken as the weaker or the lesser ones. But anyway, at this time, with the death of the Indo Greek king Menander around 130 BC, the UZ terminate Greek rule in Bactria. And then, even though like the Greek culture, I guess lingered for a time, but eventually, the UZ created their own culture to replace the Greeks that, in their expansion era, they lost control of that area since the UZ then, invaded and took over. So then it finally concludes, at least in this slide, saying that Bactria would then later become called Tokharistan. Maybe because they
Did
were.
these names get changed now?
Oh yeah. These names change hella times over the years. You know what I mean? And that's why it's good that we at least going through the timeline so that not only us but whoever is getting this information, they can easily look up. So to go back, to I'm just gonna highlight Takaristan. Oh shit, let me go back 1 minute. All right, so Takaristan, and then is now called Takaristan. Takaristan, land of the Tokharians. It makes up modern day Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and northern Afghanistan. So all of these stands
Uh-huh.
that I keep kind of jokingly saying, a white guy who looked like his name would be Stan. This is the area that the ancient Caucasians lived in.
Yeah.
All of those stands. So they, and this is when I be telling y'all, like in modern times, like when they show them niggas over there from an American propaganda viewpoint, and they show them with the little the garb covering their head, and they got the big beards and shit, and they got you programmed to just think all of them are just Arab Middle Easterners, blah 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 blah. Nah, a lot of them are just straight up and down Caucasians that never left.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
actually the realest Caucasians because they the ones that never left.
Right.
But just them big ass beards, which they over time they adopted from their Islamic neighbors, caused them to just blend in with everybody else over there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then
So that's why nobody was really asking no questions
and
then.
that's why nobody was really at their ass. And I don't know if you remember, you might have been too young, but like there was 2 or 3 instances of American white males from like the heart of America type shit, from like Nebraska, Iowa, that type of shit, that up and left America to go train with the Taliban.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thought in my mind at that time was, why or how could a white guy
Isn't that what Haddam who's or am I tripping? Did he come to he came to America from there?
who?
Haddam Hussein no, Bin Laden. Or which one?
Well, Bin Laden was rich. He had, came from a rich family, and he was probably most
Oh, I
likely.
thought America trained one of this one of
Nah, nah.
what's
Well,
I forget who America
well,
who?
Yeah, we could dip into that real quick. Let me see. Um,
Just to
where
show that America be knowing, basically, is what I'm trying to get at.
yeah, where did Bin Laden attend school? Cause a lot of these niggas was. Let me see.
People don't understand America be, super hip to a lot of these things that be going on.
Oh yeah, yeah. In a lot of cases, you know, as some of these niggas, I ain't gonna say all, but some of these niggas might have even been sent to the finest schools here in America or trained
Yeah.
at military bases here in America so that they could learn, all that high level type shit that they need to learn. And then they send them back over there to puppet, be the puppet on behalf of the government here or on behalf
Right.
of England type shit.
Exactly.
But to get, I guess, to get back um, to Kazakhstan, yeah, that's basically modern day Afghanistan and them other stands.
Right.
So to jump to the final slide, if you are able to see it, um, this map is pretty cool because it gives you just like a high level view. So where it says Han
Uh,
Dynasty.
did you not did you not switch it? Because I just see the barbarian attack.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right. My bad. I thought you was all right. So you've been following me, and you ain't seeing the screen that the YouTube people are about to see. So I could switch that
No.
up. Yeah, let me switch it so you can see the YouTube. Even though I could have just kept it on the same damn screen. But anyway, so now do you see? This is what the YouTube people see. You see that?
Let me see. Watch stream. Yeah. Now I see it.
Yeah. So on this map, you got the Han Dynasty in the bottom corner. You got these other groups, but you have the UZ, which is the white barbarians right outside the you know border of China there, and
Mhm.
then the Wusun, and then further west, northwest, you have the Sakas, and then southwest of them is the Greco-Bactrians, which clearly, you know, this at some point this was an outpost of the Greek Empire, I guess, during the time that maybe Alexander the Great was doing his thing and extended all the way over there.
Yeah.
But then, like most empires, them niggas be overreaching and can't control shit too far
Mhm.
away, and then the shit just fall
Right.
off. So,
Yeah.
so that's what that was. And then, if you look to the far left side of the map, you have you have the Sarmatian. No, you have the Allens. Oh, right over from left over from the Sakas, which is circled in red. You have the Allens, which is another white tribe. Then you have the
Uh huh.
Sarmatians, and then the Scythians.
That's dang.
Yep. So all
Are
these,
any of these names?
huh?
Are any of these names still the same?
Mm, let's see. Let me Google
I'm
real.
just curious.
Let me Google real quick. Scythians. Scythians now. Okay, yeah, boom. The Ossetes, a small nation inhabiting two adjacent states in Central Caucasus, are the last remaining linguistic and cultural descendants of the ancient nomadic Scythians who dominated the European steppe from the Balkans to Mongolia for over 1,000 years. So let me pull that up. And even though the people on YouTube land can't see it, I'm just gonna share the screen so that you can see it. Oh, that shit don't even really give no damn.
Yeah, they don't give no.
Yeah. So matter of fact, let me just copy this. I'm just gonna tell Google to show me a map of these dudes. Let me see. Map. Okay, so basically the remnants of the Scythians, you have, it looks like parts of Russia, the country called Georgia, and possibly, parts of modern day Armenia and Azerbaijan, and maybe parts of Turkey. Oh, wait, that's not it. So I'm just gonna do this map of Scythian Empire. That way, it'll give us hopefully a bigger picture view.
That's crazy.
So these niggas ruled from, it looked like, the edge of the Himalaya mountains,
Uh-huh.
towards China, all the way towards parts of the Mediterranean Sea.
Mm.
So they had,
So they had a big portion of it.
they had a nice little situation because, yeah, looking at this map, it looked like their territory definitely covered parts of Russia, a lot of them stands. You know what I mean? From all of the stands was up in there, gobbled up in there somewhere. Parts of All right, matter of fact, let me look at the world map side by side to get
The stands ain't never gonna go away.
exactly. Those are the
Those
original. That's the original white
are
people.
yeah, exactly.
Said we ain't leaving. So looking at that map kind of side by side, yeah, from almost the Himalayas and a little bit past the, kind of the beginning of the Himalayas towards
Uh-huh.
the Mediterranean Sea, and looking back at the world map, it looked like, yeah, part of China and a little bit of Mongolia, all of the stands that we just mentioned: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, fucking modern day Georgia, which is an Azerbaijan, Armenia, countries that are pretty much on the northern part of the Caucasus Mountains, which the Caucasians, may have been named after.
Yeah.
Boom, got your ass. All right. Oh no, I thought I did. But anyway, but then it looked like they also kind of had locked down modern day Iran, Persia, Iraq, Turkey, and even parts of Greece at one point.
Oh dang.
Yeah. So, they had a nice little run, but that concludes chapter 3. And I appreciate y'all, riding with us. And, maybe we'll drop part 4 tomorrow. Maybe not. But either way, we're going to be coming back at you with more and more info. And thank you for your time. Peace.
Bye.